Robert F. Kennedy Jr. dropped out of the 2024 race, endorsing Donald Trump. So let's take a look then at the latest Electoral college map coming off of that announcement and thinking about where it may have the biggest impact. At the time of his withdrawal, Kennedy was averaging 5% in national surveys. That is according to Real Clear Polling's full field average. Kamala Harris had led Donald Trump by 2 points here with 46.4% to the former president's 44.4%. Given that close margin, RFK's withdrawal begs the question, where will his supporters go? Now, polling over the last few weeks had suggested that he was polling more support from Trump than from Harris, meaning that it is unlikely that RFK voters will all just simply fall behind Trump. The split is the question. Whether it's 60-40 or 70-30 in favor of Trump could make all the difference, especially in the key battleground states that may be decided by less than a point. On your screen right now is the battleground map, showing states that are very likely to vote for one party or the other, categorized as safe, likely, or leaning toward either Vice President Kamala Harris or former President Donald Trump. There's always a chance that the states categorized as likely or leaning here could become more competitive by election day, potentially flipping in a landslide scenario. But current national polling does suggest that we're headed for a competitive election. Harris leads Trump by 1.5 percentage points, according to Real Clear Polling's latest head-to-head national average, and is led by around 1 to 4% in 10 of the last 14 polls. So returning to our electoral map, if the national environment does remain as tight as it is right now with less than a 4 or 5 point popular vote lead for either candidate, I am extremely confident that Harris and Trump will carry each of these states already placed in their respective columns. That leaves us with just 7 key battleground states. These are the swing states that entered this cycle as primary targets for both the RNC and the DNC, and they remain the states I fully expect to have the closest margins once all of the votes are counted. They are Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, the core Rust Belt trio, and then North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada across the Sun Belt. Now, RFK Jr. had qualified for the ballot in each of these states, minus Pennsylvania and Arizona, and could still appear on the ballot in some of these other states. Ultimately, though, we will probably need to wait at least another week or two to know for sure, and to know whether Trump actually gets a notable boost from the RFK endorsement. Before we move on, though, please take a second to consider subscribing to my channel down below. It's completely free and it does help me out tremendously. According to my YouTube analytics page, nearly 90% of you are not subscribed to the channel. It would mean a lot to me if we could get that down closer to, say, 50-50 by election day. But for now, let's dive into the state of play, starting with the regional dynamics. This Rust Belt trio has decided the last 2 presidential elections. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania have voted for the same candidate as one another in every presidential election since 1988. They had long made up a key section of the blue wall, before Trump broke that Democratic spell, flipping them in 2016, each by less than 1 percentage point. Trump's emerging appeal to white, non-college educated working class voters in these states and the broader Midwest region, including the 2-time Obama states of Ohio and Iowa, helped secure his 2016 victory. Notably, though, had Hillary Clinton just retained these 3 upper Rust Belt states for the Democrats in that election, Trump would never have been elected president. Then in 2020, riding off of his appeal as the most quote-unquote electable candidate in the Democratic primary, Joe Biden flipped enough white working-class voters who had supported Trump 4 years earlier to return these states into the Democratic column. Again, though, had Donald Trump held them in his camp, he would be serving a second term right now. So we know that Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania are highly correlated and are likely to vote within just about a point or 2 of one another. We also know the Democrats have put in massive overperformances in this region since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, as these states are all less religious and therefore more pro-choice than the Sun Belt states, especially Georgia down here in the Bible Belt. In the 2022 midterms, Democrats swept all 3 governor races and outperformed the polls in key Senate and House races as well. This effect was less pronounced across the Sun Belt, where Trump has also consistently performed better in 2024 polling against Biden and now Harris than in the Rust Belt. On that note, the three Sunbelt states don't necessarily carry the same weight or history as the Rust Belt trio, but they have still emerged as key targets for both parties over the past 5 to 10 years. Georgia and Arizona, notably, have trended hard to the left in that time span, going from reliable red states to now definitively purple. In Arizona, Republicans won 16 of 17 presidential elections held between 1952 and 2016, before Joe Biden won by 0.3% here 4 years ago in 2020, becoming the first Democrat to carry the Grand Canyon state since Bill Clinton in 1996. The margin, 49.4% to 49.1%, was the second closest in that election, behind only Georgia, which Biden carried by 0.2%, also becoming the first Democrat to carry the Peach State since Bill Clinton in 1992. Now, both states' leftward swing can be attributed to the rapid growth and diversification of their two major metropolitan regions, Atlanta in Georgia and Phoenix in Arizona. These are two of the fastest growing cities in the United States, attracting a large number of left-leaning college graduates looking for work from left-leaning areas of the country. This, combined with an increase in turnout among Black and Hispanic voters, helped push Biden over the edge in both states in 2020, which has since been followed up by a series of down-ballot wins for Democratic candidates in both states as well. Democrats have now won the last 3 U.S. Senate races in Arizona dating back to 2018, as well as the most recent gubernatorial contest here in 2022, where Katie Hobbs defeated Kari Lake. Meanwhile, in Georgia, Democrats flipped both U.S. Senate seats in the high-profile runoffs of January 2021, and then followed that up with another U.S. Senate victory for Raphael Warnock, then running as the incumbent, against Herschel Walker in 2022, although they did fall short in the governor's race. As for the state of Nevada now, 6 electoral votes, it is the smallest battleground in terms of population, and therefore the least electorally significant. Unlike Arizona and Georgia, though, Nevada has actually trended to the right in recent years, as Republicans have made gains among Hispanic voters a key racial demographic here, and the fact that Nevada ranks 44th out of the 50 U.S. states in terms of the proportion of residents with a college degree. That is the lowest of any state that Biden won in 2020, and it's significant because voters with a college degree do tend to lean left, while those without lean right, and that divergence has grown at an astronomical rate in the Trump era. Now, here in 2020, Biden did carry Nevada by 2.4%, an identical margin to Hillary Clinton in 2016, which does mean that Nevada actually trended to the right between those elections relative to the nation, since Biden won the national popular vote by a greater margin than Clinton did. Republicans then capitalized on that trend by flipping the governor's race in 2022 and coming within a point of unseating a reasonably popular Democratic incumbent senator as well. Not to mention, they received more votes across Nevada's 4 U.S. House races for the first time in decades. Finally, going back over to North Carolina, a perennially purple yet Republican-leaning state, where Republicans have now won 8 straight contests for president and for Senate. Notably, though, each of those races were decided by less than 6 percentage points, hence perennially purple. It always does seem to be in play for the Democrats down the stretch, yet they always fall short. Here in 2024, the Harris campaign is clearly making a concerted effort to push themselves over the top this time around, and that has been reflected in the polling data, which we'll get to in a second. So that's the lay of the land in these individual states. Like I had touched on earlier, Trump consistently polled better against Biden in Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina than he ever did in Pennsylvania, Michigan, or Wisconsin. And that has carried over to polls with Harris as well. At the time of recording this video, Harris leads Trump by 3.3% based on 19 polls in Wisconsin. That is her largest margin of lead in any of these states. And she also leads Trump by 2.5% based on 16 polls in Michigan, as well as the Keystone State of Pennsylvania, 1.1% based on 29 polls. Comparing that to the Sunbelt Quartet, Trump is ahead in Nevada by exactly 1 point based on 19 polls, and he leads in Arizona, albeit by a single 0.1%, 0.1% based on 15 polls. His widest margin currently can be found in Georgia at 2.7% based on, again, 15 polls. And then finally, in a major turn of events over the last week or so, Harris has taken the lead in North Carolina by 1.1% based on 10 polls. So now all 6 polling averages are within or hovering around the margin of error, and there is definitely a contrast there between the two regions. It's a difference that is also reflected in the latest betting market odds via Polymarket, where Trump's odds of winning Nevada sit at 51%, Arizona 55%, Georgia 61%, and then North Carolina 60%. Meanwhile, Trump and Harris are almost perfectly split in Pennsylvania at 51 to Trump, 49 to Harris, while Harris has a clear edge in Michigan at 61% and in Wisconsin at 57%. Now going back to our battleground map, if you were to ask me my personal opinion on how the results will shape up 70 days from now, I would place Michigan down as tilting Democrat, while Wisconsin and Pennsylvania both remain as toss-ups. While the polling in Wisconsin this cycle has been really good for Democrats, I simply refuse to make the same mistakes as in 2016 and 2020, where Trump notably outperformed the polls by more than 6 percentage points on both occasions. Wisconsin is also just a fundamentally more Republican state than both Michigan and Pennsylvania as well, with a demographic profile that doesn't feel particularly suited to Kamala Harris's candidacy. It's more white, more rural, and has a lower percentage of college-educated residents than the other two. The abortion issue, though, is truly Democrats' last saving grace here, which is strong enough, at least in the short term, to give them at least 50-50 odds right now. Pennsylvania, meanwhile, is Pennsylvania. I don't think it's going to move much from 50-50 until Election Day. Down in the Sun Belt, I do still have North Carolina is tilting towards Trump. Again, polls have trended towards Democrats in recent weeks, but similar to Wisconsin, we have seen that film before, and North Carolina is definitely the most Republican-leaning of the 7 battlegrounds, fundamentally speaking. I also have Georgia as a tilt Trump state, as another fundamentally more Republican state than the others. This is Trump's best polling state at the moment, and while it has of course shifted hard to the left in recent years, Democrats will still need a whole lot of things to go right in order to keep it in their column after Biden carried it by just 0.2% in 2020. Again, his slimmest margin of any states. Now, the party has recently relied on the 90-30-30 rule for victories in the peach states, where in order to win, they need to get 90% of the black vote and 30% of the white vote with an electorate that is at least 30% black. Kamala Harris should give Democrats a better shot at reaching those numbers than Biden would have, but crosstab aggregators still do suggest that at least some of Trump's inroads among minority voters are here to stay. Those gains will also help him out in Arizona and Nevada, though Harris's top-line polling numbers look a lot better right now in both of these states, and Democrats have seen more success in statewide elections here recently. In fact, it has now been 8 years since Republicans have won a federal election in Arizona, as Trump last won the state in 2016. For those reasons, I do still have Arizona as a toss-up and Nevada as well. So that does it for this 2024 presidential election map prediction and analysis. Neither candidate hits the necessary 270 electoral votes, as Trump currently leads with 251 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 241, with 46 left up for grabs in Nevada, Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. As always, let me know whether you agree or disagree with these ratings in the comments below. Shout out to my channel members on screen here. Thank you so much for your support. If you'd like to become a member, go ahead and click the join button below this video to receive exclusive perks. Make sure to subscribe to my channel down below as well, and please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. You can check out more content from my channel here, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.